Everybody know everybody? Yes? You're all part of the same Bhakti Vriksha group. And we're grouped by families. I've been trying to be really careful with social distancing, but families together are fine. But otherwise, let's be really careful with everything. This is your home, yes? And your two little ones?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay.
She'll be going up.
Okay. Growing up or going up? Well, bye-bye. We'll see you later when you grow up. Okay, I see 4 younger members here. Do any of you 4 need an introduction to the Putana story? I'm looking at you. Over here. Do you need an introduction to the Putana story, or are you familiar? Familiar. Yeah. How about you 3 over there? Need an introduction? No. You're good? Okay. Okay. The shy one? How about you? You know the Putana story? Okay, good. So that means if I ask you some questions about Putana, you'll have the answers, right? Don't worry, I won't do that. We're just getting to know each other, so I won't do that. I've been involved for a number of days now, starting the Thanksgiving holiday, discussing the pastime of Krishna's first encounter with the first of the demons sent by Kamsa to kill Krishna. And one of the main features of the pastime is her deceitfulness or hypocrisy. You know what the word hypocrite means? Yeah. Yeah? What's the meaning?
Like somebody does something. Somebody tells somebody to do something, to not do something, but they do it themselves.
Yeah. They say one thing, do another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Yeah? We don't do that. We don't say one thing, do another thing, because that's a hypocrite. So if you say, you do. And that's one way of being a hypocrite. And in Putana's case, she came in the disguise, like you see in the painting at the bottom. Beautiful form. Her form, she had a number of mystic powers. One of them was she could fly on a broomstick. She was a witch. She knew the magic of how to fly on a broomstick, or a part of a broken branch of a tree. And then another is she knew how to take different forms. So it's very clever. She wanted to look for little children, because this was like another thing that she was good at. She was good at killing children. She knew not only what was poison, but the most virulent, quick-killing poison there exists. And she knew how to get it. And that's what she used for killing children. This is described in Vishnu Purana specifically, that the poison that she used, instantly death. Because sometimes it's not so instant. Probably at some point in time in your high school studies, you'll read about Socrates You've heard of Socrates, the Greek philosopher? So he believed in the soul, and that was like a threat to the government of the time. So they said, you believe in the soul? Here's some poison, drink it. And it was hemlock. It would work slowly. The description is he was narrating the effect of the poison starting from his feet to his thighs and up to his heart and then kaput. So some poison worked slowly and she knew the instant poison. So she came in this very, very beautiful form, so beautiful that the residents of Vrindavan thought that maybe she's the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, looking for Narayan. Or maybe she's the wife of one of the demigods, this demigod, that demigod, the other demigod. Maybe that's who she is. And they are very respectful to the demigods, so they just let her go wherever she wanted to go. And her mission was to find Krishna and kill him. So she was deceiving with her beauty and her golden ornaments and this and that. But if you see behind her, that's the real Putana. Doesn't look very nice. Certainly not what she looked like when she came into the house of Nanda Jasoda. So as you see at the bottom, this is part 4. We've been discussing the lessons to be learned as explained by Bhaktisiddhanta. You know who is Bhaktisiddhanta? Prabhupada, you know who is Prabhupada? Prabhupada's guru, Bhaktisiddhanta. We're going to see some pictures. Poison of Putana was false teachings, and she was the administrator of poison, or the minister of false teachings is false guru. That's the comparison. It's not allegorical, it's rather, they both say, listen carefully, the pastime itself is meant to protect those who are searching for Krishna from false teachings, false teachers. And just by hearing the pastime, because it's one of the benediction that comes at the very, very end of the chapter, one is protected just by hearing this pastime. And it's on that strength that they make this commentary. So, false guru, part 4. And here's a little expression that we've heard, 3 parts about hypocrisy and so forth. The last we heard is this teaching of this, the risk, the danger, be very cautious about hypocrites in the form of teachers that are false teachers. Sikhism, Buddhism, Christianity, it's not exclusive to this pastime, it's a principle. Then comes a question. Why did Bhaktisiddhanta do it? Do it means there can be organized religions that over a period of time, from the time the person starts the teaching to sometime later, and the followers are not capable like the teacher. So knowing that can happen, and often does happen, here comes the question, why did Bhaktisiddhanta start an organization? As the author of the article Putana, we're going to read from that article, and as a scholarly Vaishnava aware of the pervasiveness of hypocrisy in organized religion, why did he start a formal religious organization? The Gaudiya Math was what he called it. So we're going to read a little bit. In this article, he calls it the Putana is the title of the article. Regulation is necessary for controlling the inherent worldliness of conditioned souls. Srila Saraswati Thakur saw that the vast majority of persons in this degraded age of sense gratification need some form and regulation to help them be steady in their devotional practices. It is said that man is a social animal. Srila Saraswati Thakur saw that the natural tendency to want to identify oneself with a group could be dovetailed in Krishna conscious institution, where membership entailed following a strict schedule of devotional activities, thus helping the followers to become fixed in their bhajan. Now this is, that text I just read is taken from some writings, maybe some of you are familiar with. There's a publication called Krishna Kathamrita. There's a nice devotee, Madhavananda, that has been publishing this for nearly a decade now. And he takes articles from different places and generally just presents them, but sometimes makes some comments. Yeah, we heard a nice description. I'll just summarize it. One friend or an acquaintance of Bhaktisiddhanta gave him a little feedback. In your organization, there are some persons that don't follow. So why do you keep them around? You should kick them out, basically. He used that language, but Bhaktisiddhanta's reply was, what is a better position for this person than giving them the opportunity to rectify themselves? You know, it's something like in a hospital, you have physicians and you have care for physicians. You don't kick people out of a hospital because they have an illness. That's what the hospital is for, to help people with illness. So if there isn't a better position for such persons, so these still have an opportunity. And certainly those that are in an administrative position need to be vigilant. Each one of us needs to be vigilant about contacting Krishna Katha and the association that we keep. We should aspire to keep association with very genuine devotees. But which one of us is perfect? Please raise your hand if you're a perfect devotee. So we're less than perfect, and we seek the association of others that are at least striving for a higher stage of bhakti, higher stage of purity, and at the same time we are vigilant for keeping a little bit caution about association with those that are in the hypocritical or, you know, not so sincere, not so genuine position. It's a little delicate. We don't want to be judgmental, but we have to be discriminating at the same time. We discussed this a few times already. In this same Krishna Karnamrita, that's this publication of Madhavananda, there's an article, the combination of Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, where these two acharyas, used two weapons. Nice photograph of Prabhupada. Turns out this photograph was taken in New York, because I recognize the asana and the background and the whole thing. But Prabhupada liked very much having a full set of his books on display whenever he gave a public lecture. In part it was for selling books, but it was also for establishing the phrase he uses, Krishna consciousness is authorized. So the Vedas come from Aparushaya Shabda, there's authorized source, and the presentation is coming into cyclic succession, an authorized source, and the commentary or purports are therefore authorized. And that's the platform upon which he stood and presented what he presented, or helping people who are compromised with being less than perfect to move forward. So the points, these two secret weapons, were the chanting of the holy name and Srimad Bhagavatam. So Grantharaj first Here's from Krishna Karnamrita, or Krishna Katamrita. By analyzing the work of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta and Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, it is seen that they employed two secret weapons in the foundation of their institutions. They knew that as long as these two elements were present, in spite of Putana's inevitable arrival, their sincere followers would be safe. Those secret weapons were Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Krishna's holy names. Every vast object, whether spiritual or material, has a particular dharma or intrinsic nature. The dharma of water is to be wet, the dharma of fire is to be hot, etc. These objects cannot be separated from their essential qualities. One of the essential and inseparable qualities of Srimad Bhagavatam is that it always creates a revolution, spiritual. Tadbhag Vasargo Janata Agaviplavo. This transcendental literature will bring about a revolution in the sinful lives of the world's misdirected population. If one sincerely reads Srimad Bhagavatam, then the Putanas and Kamsas who inevitably arise within all religious institutions will be exposed. The second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam therefore describes Dharma Projita Kaitapotra Paramo. This Bhagavad Purana completely rejects all cheating religious activities which are materially motivated and propounds the highest truth. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and his followers, such as our Srila Prabhupada, mandated for their institutions that there must be daily hearing and reciting of Srimad Bhagavatam, known as Krishna Tulya Bhagavata. That is, the Bhagavatam is not different from Krishna. They were, no doubt, confident that child Krishna in the form of Bhagavatam would safeguard sincere spiritual aspirants from Putana. Now, Putana, the description from yesterday, included within and without. There's our own self-deception in hypocritical tendencies and the association from without, but will be protected by the Srimad Bhagavatam. They have faith, and the sincere persons are protected from the Putana tendencies in the world and within themselves. Sincerity is necessary. We've been discussing kind of every single class that comes up. The intention is so important. To sustain your Krishna consciousness, the intention has to be very clearly put in focus. While here, I was given a gift, a book by Shivaram Maharaj that's 100 pages long on that topic, the topic of intention. At each stage, Sankalpa is the word. Very thoroughly researched. I haven't read it yet because I've been busy, but I do plan to read it because at every stage, from the very, very beginning, this is the Putana position to protect a person who is searching for Krishna from false teachers and false teachings. And then at other stages, maintaining clear focus on the purpose, the intention, making the Krishna connection. If one has that sincerity, Krishna will protect you. That's the Putana message. The Putana being destroyed by Krishna message. Now here's another verse that amplifies the same point. It's from 8th Canto, chapter 23, where the verse says, mantratas tantratas chidbram. There may be discrepancies in pronouncing the mantras and observing regular principles, and moreover, there may be discrepancies in regard to time, place, person, and paraphernalia. But when your Lordship's holy name is chanted, everything becomes faultless. Anu sankirtanam tava. This is again taken from Madhavananda's text on this topic. The chanting should go on instead of meetings, resolutions, dissolutions, revolutions, and no solutions. That's Prabhupada's phrase. There should be chanting. One of the devotees I admire very much in the Hare Krishna movement is Ravindra Sarup Prabhu. Some of you may have heard of him or maybe have heard him. He and I were initiated at the same time in New York. He went on to become a PhD and I went on to become a little brahmachari book distributor. And he's always been a luminary, in my eyes, in Krishna consciousness. So I remember when he was the chairman of the GBC, as happens from time to time, almost always, some major something comes, big storm, and he was very clear to him he didn't know what to do to address. So he did what he knew what to do. He went to Vrindavan for Kartik and chanted 64 rounds every day in Vrindavan. That's what he did. He took shelter of the holy name. And, the storm simmered down a bit, and he had spiritual strength and spiritual intelligence to how to address the now somewhat quieted down storm, because he had full faith in the holy name, which is exactly what we're hearing. Faults are always present in religious institutions, especially in this age of Kali, however, because that's the topic, the institutional dimension of discrepancy, deception, hypocrisy, etc. However, the Gaudiya Vaishnava devotees have strong faith in Nama. They are Nama Ashrayi, those who take shelter of the holy name. They understand that any faults one may perceive in persons chanting the holy name are only temporary and apparent. Such Sharagrahi Vaishnavas, devotees following the essence, do not criticize members of other sampradayas, camps, or institutions who are sincerely chanting the holy name. Rather, they feel transcendental ecstasy seeing the spreading of Mahaprabhu's mission. They have strong faith in the holy name as the quintessential panacea for all faults and troubles. Being non-different from his holy name, Krishna inspires and protects the devotee who sincerely calls upon him with love. You know the verse, Tesham Satata Yuktanam. What's the rest? Vajatam Priti Purvakam. You know the verse? Say it as loud as you can.
Tesham Satata Yuktanam Vajatam Priti Purvakam Dadami Putti Yogam Tam Enamam Abhiyanti Te.
Fantastic. Who's your teacher? Sunday school or mom? Or dad? All of the above. You're not telling. Non-disclosure. Okay. You know the meaning? To those who are constantly devoted.
Yeah. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me.
Fantastic. You get an extra piece of my prasadam today. Well done. Per this promise, Krishna gives intelligence to the sincere devotee who is doing Nam Bhajan. Part of that intelligence is to reveal who is a sadhu and who is a cheater, just as baby Krishna exposed the true form of Putana to the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Now they were innocent, but Krishna exposed her. Even after the disappearance of Sri Guru, if the disciple follows the instructions of his spiritual master and continues to chant the holy name, he can continue to associate with his divine master. In Vamana Kalpa is a book quoted in Bhakti Sandarbha. Brahma says, one's mantra is identical with his guru. One's guru is identical with Lord Hari. When the guru is pleased, Lord Hari is also pleased. That's nice, huh? So, we'll carry on. What about hypocrisy in practitioners of Krishna consciousness movement? No such thing, right? Once, this is an interesting story. Shishir Kumar Ghosh, the editor of a book or a publication, daily newspaper, Ananda Bazar Patrika, said to Bhaktisiddhanta, I already told you this story, I see there are many hypocrites in your mission, people who are not very sincere. What they say and what they do are not the same, right? That's hypocrisy. Why do you not put them out? Let them go home, get married or something like that. Why keep them in your mat? And Bhaktisiddhanta replied, oh, editor, what is a better place for them than this mat? Is there a better place to save them? Here they may be good or bad, but if their fortune will allow it, they will become good. If not, what can I do? Is there a better place? Then ultimately, the false guru is oneself in the mind. For in spiritual life, no one else can cheat us. This is one of Bhaktisiddhanta's teachings. It's like celebrated amongst devotee circles. No one can cheat you except yourself. Or if you're honest with yourself, no one can cheat you. They may think they can cheat you, but they can't. That is, Krishna will protect you. That's the point. If one is sincere, then Krishna will manifest in the form of good intelligence and provide protection from the false gurus of this world. Shri Krishna manifests as eternal birth in the pure consciousness of the serving soul who is located above all mundane limitations. Now this is responsive to association and protecting ourselves from unwholesome association or the Putana, instruments sent by Kamsa or sent by malicious people. They'd whether to do themselves or send somebody to do on their behalf, as Kamsa did. Because Putana, well, you know the story, but I'll tell the story anyways because it's nice to hear the story. On the very day of Krishna's appearance, Krishna Janmashtami, after Krishna appeared in the prison house of Kamsa, prayers were offered by Vasudeva and then by Devaki with the request, assume a childlike form. He assumed a childlike form with the request, take me to the other side of the Jamuna because I don't want to be at risk with Kamsa. So they did that. Vasudeva did that. Krishna assured them, don't worry. The guards will fall asleep. And don't worry, the chains that are on your arms and legs will fall off. And don't worry, the lock on the prison door will come open. And don't worry, you can cross the river Jamuna, although it's stormy and there's no electricity and there's no moonlight because it's a stormy night. But Anantashesh provided the light from the ornaments on his head, and he crossed the river Jamuna and brought back the female child that was the daughter of Yashoda. And when Kamsa tried to kill the 8th child of Devaki, it didn't work because she was Yogamaya. You can't kill Yogamaya. She slipped from his hand, flew into the air, assumed the form of Durga, and then announced, the 8th child of Devaki has already been born. No use trying to kill me. So he got a heads up. He got a warning. The 8th child of Devaki has already appeared and is somewhere else. So he was searching, where's that child? So he called the child killer. That's why he called Putana, because she had That was her thing. She had a reputation, she was really good at it. She loved finding children and killing them. So he sent her to find Krishna. He didn't know the name, but this newborn child. Go find this newborn child. Same night, he sent her. So she didn't come the next day, but shortly thereafter, because this Putana pastime is said to have taken place when Krishna was 6 years old. So the verse describes, she was searching. Our acharyas say, one acharya says, she didn't kill anyone, she was just searching. Another acharya said the children she killed were in Kamsa's group, but she didn't kill any Vaishnavas. Anyway, she finally found Krishna's home. And the pretense is what got her past everybody. Because if she showed her really ugly form, she never would have gotten to Krishna, so she had to be deceitful. I mean, that was the calculated plan. So they were deceived, but Krishna protected them from the deceit by exposing who she really was. And not just killing her, but very kindly, not just liberating her from the sins of so many killing of children, because that's really sinful, but because she came even for the disguise as a mother, with the intention to kill him, he accepted that gesture, gave her a position in the spiritual world. How do we understand that? Or what about the rest of us? In narrating this whole pastime, sometimes people ask, well, maybe it's a good idea to become a Putana's follower, because then I go back to Godhead. Just go to try to kill Krishna, and that's not a good plan. We follow Rupa Goswami, we don't follow Putana. And there's certainty for followers of Rupa Goswami, and there's not at all certainty for Putanas. Just like, a very simple example, it's within the authority of a prestigious university to give an honorary degree without someone having even enrolled or taken a class or taken an exam or anything. They give honorary degrees. Don't count on it. It's possible, but don't count on it. So, Kripa Siddhi is possible. Krishna can give his mercy. The screen is jumping up and down. Krishna can give his mercy however he wants. He doesn't need justification. It's causeless mercy. Causeless mercy is causeless. It's a light show.
Yeah, just
Oh, okay, you're okay. It's good now? Okay. Mercy can come causelessly. For those that follow the path of sadhana bhakti, mercy is also required. Just last month, for a whole month, we discussed the Damodar Leela, and Mother Yasoda couldn't bind Krishna until Krishna gave some special mercy, and then she could bind Krishna. So in the practice, the teaching, the lesson from these pastimes is, we must make some effort following perfected souls, not Putanas. We follow perfected souls, make some effort, prayasa, endeavor, and wait for Krishna's mercy. The good news is, Krishna's merciful. And he's certain to give us mercy. But he may want to make sure that we're really certain that we want him. So it may take a little while. When I was a very new devotee, I started practicing Krishna consciousness at the State University of New York in Buffalo. There was a center there. Somebody at 26 2nd Avenue was attending Prabhupada's programs, and he liked Prabhupada's presentation so much, he said, if you send somebody to Buffalo, I'll sponsor the center, and, all the costs involved in running the center. So Prabhupada arranged for Rupanuga Prabhu to go to Buffalo. I didn't know that till much later, but so I was a student at that university, and there was a center that he was the president of, and there were Jagannath deities. It was a nice little place. And there was one lady who would regularly come, and she liked kirtan, and she liked LSD. So she would come to kirtan, and she had hair that reached all the way down to the floor. And she would dance like this, with her hair moving like she was somewhere else in the midst of kirtan. And whenever class came, she'd sit, and somehow she managed to sit up rather than pass out. And she'd always ask the same question: when will I see Krishna? She was sincere. And somehow she contacted the Krishna consciousness movement, and the answer that was consistently given to her every time she asked: just continue to be patient, and Krishna will reveal himself by his mercy. So I moved on from that university. I don't know whether she saw Krishna or not, but that's the principle. We make some endeavor with some intention. Here we go again, this sankalpa word. The intention to be in our relationship with Krishna, following the path of Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami didn't recommend taking LSD, but so she had a few steps more to take. But you follow Rupa Goswami sincerely, with a sincere interest, Krishna will protect us from false teachings, false teachers, and hypocrisy, and our own hypocrisy, and our own self-delusion, and so forth. Krishna will protect us from outside and inside. And in due course, the full reciprocation of Krishna's due. And that's the conclusion of our teaching from Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhaktivinoda Thakur on this topic. And I wanted to make a particular expression of gratitude. There's a devotee named Adi Shakti, and this, whatever the number of hours, 35, 40 hours of katha, has a lot to do with the research. She spent some time gathering reference materials and commentaries and this and that, and assembled it nicely. So I wanted to formally express my gratitude for her kind assist. Krishna kills Putana. So let's see. What's been going on is there's many persons that are participating in these classes remotely. So they'll have a whole series of questions, most likely. And it's nice to start with the people who are present. So those that are remote, they can send in something in the chat box. And if anyone here would like to discuss anything, some elaboration or something, please speak up or raise your hand. No. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for covering a topic that I just heard while I was reading the children's storybook for my kids.
Oh.
I never knew it could have so much of depth in it. So there's so many facets. I have a question about the desire to feel distinct or that I am special in some ways or others. So, I know in Prabhupada, in one of the purports to Bhagavatam, he mentioned that lust can manifest into three types: distinction, adoration, or material profit
Yes.
for others.
Profit, adoration, distinction.
So, I don't know, it's the way that I am conditioned since childhood, or, you know, the experiences that I have received, I've always received a lot of attention. So, how do we use that in spiritual life to help us?
And moreover, how do we take that principle and help our children understand that principle
Right.
when they're receiving some encouragement or some recognition?
Right. And there's one more part to it, but I can probably wait.
Is it a layer on top or it's something else?
It's a layer on top. So, relating to our topic, institutional topic, in order to try to be distinct from others, sometimes, you know, obviously in my very neophyte stage,
Competitive spirit.
competitive spirit, exactly, that comes out.
It's a carryover from our conditioning in academics, in career, in social life. You know, if you can't win, don't play. That was a T-shirt I saw something. It's a competitive spirit. So how do you? Your question is how do you take that tendency and make it into Krishna consciousness? That's
Yes,
the idea.
Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj.
It's not easy. There's the purifying that tendency, and then there's the pure tendency. So the purifying that tendency, Prabhupada called it transcendental competition, which he encouraged. In particular, recognizing his audience. In one of the areas, there were two areas that I'm familiar with. One was in book distribution. He would engage this Maharati against that Maharati and tease them. They're doing better than you. And then he would call it transcendental competition. I don't know how transcendental it was, but you know, the transcendentalness is Krishna should be pleased, or Prabhupada should be pleased because books are. We knew that Prabhupada was pleased through book distribution, and so there was efforts, but then there was competitive efforts. So the spiritualization of it is Krishna is pleased. Now the in between, to get to the stage where that's the only focus is Krishna is to be pleased, there's the material part. I want the recognition, I want the honor, I want the distinction. Not so much profit, but I want recognizing that your question is how to purify that or connect that to Krishna consciousness. Make the ultimate objective that Krishna is to be pleased, and it'll help you get there. Rather than just trying to squash that tendency, purge the tendency, is under guidance. Now, this is a very important part. Contemplating who is to be pleased, engage that tendency. Another example that I'm familiar with is the artists. You know, there were some were more talented than others, and Prabhupada wanted all of the artists to be encouraged. So he would encourage this one, he would encourage that one, encourage the other one. And they may feel, well, I'm pleasing Prabhupada the most, or I'm the best artist, or something like that. But the quality of the art went up, and they became purified as they were striving to please Prabhupada with their art, and the art quality became more and more, and became better and better. And they were becoming purified. Now, it can be a cause of fall down, or when you read carefully, because you asked this question, you can read carefully Madhurya Kandamati chapter 3 about Anartha Nivritti, That's one of the 4 categories. Lava Puja Pratishta. When you're a little bit successful in spiritual life, there's a tendency for a formation of yet another kind of anartha. So you're trying to be the enjoyer of that little success in bhakti. That's an anartha. And it's hard to remove it once it's there. So the answer to your question is not easy, but going back to something spoken earlier, intention is very important. And you're asking the question indicates intention. And it's true, the society in which we've grown up is materialistic, and the materialistic tendency is to reward people for, doing well in something. In modern American homes, there's a trophy room for their kids. And kids, it's narcissism. It's what it's called. It's just, you're the best at whatever you do, and you get some reward and gather the stuff. It's toxic. It's debilitating. It destroys good character. It increases tension within the individual and between individuals, and so we have increasing conflicts, even when people are successful. So to speak, one trying to be successful. So it's very toxic. So it's important. Your question is important because it's part of the atmosphere that we live in and our children are growing up in. And even if parents don't do it, it's all around them, and so they want it because it's all around them. Understanding the toxicity of it and what the replacement of. The replacement is the Krishna is to be pleased. And when another is successful, we celebrate because that means Krishna is pleased. Let me then also try to please Krishna nicely. That's the purification element. Then it becomes a team effort, not just a solo effort. Let me be the best.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Over here.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, thank you very much. We got the opportunity to have your darshan during these strange times and feeling very delighted hearing you. This morning I was reading a pastime of Haridas Thakur, and you explained in your class the potency of the Krishna's name, the Mahamantra, and it completely resonated when I was also reading through his example, Haridas Thakur's example, that how he weathered whatever he gone through by the king, and through his humility and potency of Mahamantra, he got the protection. At the same time, he also had to face a lot of hypocrites down the line, and he again through his humility he encountered them successfully.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, Maharaj, you mentioned in your class that we also should try to stay away from such hypocrites in our life, and that means we should be in the devotee association, and probably because we are also part of the corporate life where we don't have many devotees over there.
Right.
So we face it on a day-to-day basis, and we try to stay protected, but sometimes it becomes challenging. And not only challenging, the fear is sometimes we may also act like that. So it's kind of feeling a little bit how to keep the boundary and stay original.
Okay. One of the glories of Bhaktivinoda Thakur is he was also a householder with 10 children, and he had life in the world. So when he wrote commentaries or explanations of the Bhakti process, he would expand and be very specific about instruction for householders, instruction for renunciates. So a book that will help you with this question is by Bhaktivinoda it's called Bhaktialoka. Bhaktialoka is the title. And it's describing the 6 and the 6. Shadbhir Bhakti Visidyati, Sadbhir Bhakti Vinashyati. So in both of those it speaks about association. It's in both lists of 6. And he explains, for example, this question of in the workplace, we don't take intimate association, atsat sangatyag. We don't take intimate association, but you have an occupation. So you associate with formality and courtesy and kindness. Good day, sir. How are you? How is the family? And all those, the social courtesies. You do social courtesies. But in your heart, you are keeping confidential association for the devotees. Now, something that you can do when you confront hypocrisy or to protect yourself from hypocrisy in that atmosphere, because it's prevalent, and competitive spirit is prevalent, and so forth. See yourself as an instrument of Krishna or Lord Chaitanya or your spiritual master to teach the way of Bhagavad Gita by your character and your conduct and your speech. You're a preambulatory Bhagavad Gita. You have that opportunity. You're not going to sit and give a Bhagavad Gita class during lunchtime, but you're going to profile Bhagavad Gita's message as an instrument. And thereby you're protected. And if you lose sight of that, you become disconnected with that, then you're vulnerable. You can become infected with the disease in the workplace if you're not protected, or if your resistance is not strong, you'll contract the disease. So keep your resistance strong, and that is being an instrument of the disciplic succession in the workplace, teaching Bhagavad Gita by your words and speech. It's not easy, but that's the protection. Then you're under the care of the spiritual energy, and you're not, you leave your guard down, and that is, you get caught up in forgetfulness, and then it's easy to become, vulnerable and infected.
Thank you,
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj, for the wonderful lecture and the whole series that you've been giving. It's like Rajneesh was saying, and Akshay said that we didn't realize there was so much more to the pastime than what we've just read. Rico, I just had a question related to what you just spoke about. My question is, how much should we then encourage a child? Is there a limit so that the child doesn't start feeling proud, and yet we don't crush the confidence of the child, and where to draw the line, because we don't want the child to feel
Yeah, parenting is a big topic.
tricky.
Big topic. My experience is there's no end to the topic of parenting. And where do you draw the line? So a lot depends on your Krishna consciousness and the child and the relationship with the child. Always be encouraging, at the same time some boundaries, softly, gently, lovingly drawn, is to help the child understand over there is toxic. And it's not easy to be a parent, but if the message is presented lovingly and affectionately, and the child understands that's the place where mother or father are coming from, then they'll more easily receive the message. And then there's all kinds of, there's personality differences and psychophysical nature differences. There's association amongst their peers, differences, peer pressure. Nonetheless, parenting has its responsibility. So you best as you model and establish an affectionate, loving relationship. So when you need to be, caregiving and present some boundaries and encouraging, there's consistency, not controlling, but consistency is in nurturing. Best is be the good example, because then you're the best association for the child. Not you, but any parent is the best association for the child by being exemplary of what the ideal is. It's similar to the answer I gave about being in the workplace. We teach by achar, and then the prachar will follow the achar, and it'll be taken, with affection. Here's one other thing. I don't know if she's attending the class, but when I was in Boston, every morning class and every evening class, there was a 9-year-old in the class, because she was the daughter of the family I was staying with. And as soon as the class was over, her hand was up. She was really enthusiastic to participate in the discussion. Had good, nice questions. Because I wasn't mom and dad, I was able to help her overcome some shortcomings in a way that was taken, it was intended with affection, it was received with laughter. Consistently. There's certain things I stayed with and teased her. And she laughed, and I said, I'm really happy you're taking it the way that you're taking it, because it's coming from a place of affection. And she took it. And I think, so someone other than mom and dad, that's a role model for the young person, may also help. Because mom and dad are the authority figure, and somebody else may not have that same impact upon the heart as the authority figure. So it's good to have wholesome people for a child growing up to associate with, who can hear from and understand this is what mom and dad would say, and I can take it, because it's not coming from mom and dad. Different relationships are different, and different children are different, and so on. But that's sometimes helpful in parenting.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the wonderful lecture. Appreciate it. Prabhuji, you mentioned something, and I heard about, you said, sometimes we cannot, perform our devotional service under regulated principles, especially the sadhana bhakti, which you just mentioned about it.
Okay.
And so question comes, with the time of pandemic right now, with all this COVID, our minds are full of fear, a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
And, though we try to focus on a lot of, devotional service, but still, I guess, we do get affected, because of
emotionally
and music, and because right now the association has become lesser,
yes.
because we cannot meet the devotees,
yes.
and, we can't go to temple
yes.
because of a lot of restrictions.
Yes.
And we have been so much dependent on the technologies,
yes,
and we don't depend on the iPhone. It's always I, right? So the iPhone, I guess, the phones, and there's a lot of news out there, but at the same time we can't get rid of it, phone, and we can, but we have to depend on that, because that's the only media of connection to people.
Yeah.
How do we, and when we see the phone and we still get a lot of, it's hard to balance that sadhana, but it really affects sometimes, right?
What to speak of teenagers? You're lucky you're not a teenager. Count your blessings. Ask these young fellows. Do you have struggle with your iPhone and the technology that's available on your iPhone? Be honest.
There's a limit.
There's a limit. And does the limit come from within or come from without?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, from your question itself, you kind of have an answer. That is, when you get in your car, you fasten your seatbelt. And you stay within the speed limit. And when it says there's a curve ahead, you slow down. You stay within the safety boundaries. This is specifically now with technology. Technology has its advantages and it has its detriments, plus and minus with everything. And the times that we're in are the times that we're in. We are dependent more on technology than we were before pandemic. For a lot of things, work included, and so on. So stay in the middle of the road, keep your seatbelt fastened, and follow. So within limits, the tendency is to not have control of the mind and senses, and the limits are exceeded. And then when the limits are exceeded even a little bit, thinking, oh, it's just a little bit, then a little bit becomes more than a little bit, and then it takes over the mind and senses. Whatever that might be for somebody is different than another somebody, but indulgence, it makes the mind dull and becomes addictive. Set boundaries or limits, like he's expressing. That's responsible, and for. And hearing your question, I was thinking of a college program that I attended somewhere, and it was a really simple. It was a new group of people, so it was karma and reincarnation and Bhagavad Gita, 101. At the end, someone came up after questions. The girl came up, started crying. You don't know what it's like being a millennial. It's impossible. I can't even do my work. I can't do my yoga. I gotta answer my Facebook. I gotta answer my email. And being a millennial. So you got it easy. You're not a millennial. But younger people have the same or more. And then plus their generation. That's their life. Their friends are online. Their friends aren't the person next to them. You know what I mean? So it's so artificial. Boundaries. This is wholesome. And stay within the boundary of wholesome. And don't go into the ditch at 60 miles an hour. Because you're going to crash. And protect yourself within boundaries. And if you don't, you're at risk. If you find, here's another benefit. If you find something that gives you spiritual happiness, do that regularly. Here's one that I do regularly. There's two that I do regularly. When I have meals, I don't know if you can do this in workplace, but strap yourself into something that you're just hearing or viewing a recording of something. You get some spiritual nourishment. And yes, 3 times a day, usually for most people. And so at least that. And when there's an opportunity, there's some discretionary time, make it a point to do something that's of a spiritual nature rather than grab your phone and do something else that you might, by habit forming, just do. But have your Bhagavad Gita and be a verse from Bhagavad Gita. Take a habit that's nourishing spiritually and become, replace it. The higher taste with the lesser taste. By cultivation. That helps with the setting of the boundaries that you mentioned. No limits, that was what you used, limits.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for such a wonderful class. I think you already kind of answered the question, but personally my biggest challenge is to stay committed to the intention. You mentioned about the intention. I think I personally may have the intention, but I don't feel the 100% of the intention all the time. So
Yeah,
how
comes and
do I
goes.
try to develop that?
Well, you cultivate it and have reminders when you forget. I've listened now during my meals, I've listened twice to a very wonderful interview of Jagatarini, Purijan Prabhu's good wife, Prabhupada disciple, and she addresses her way of dealing with this. Specifically, the topic was Vrindavan, because she and her husband spent a good amount of time in Vrindavan. And she wants to cultivate Vrindavan consciousness. No, you're okay. And I'm watching your facial expression, because hearing the child cry, the mind, there goes the mind, and okay, so your husband's taken care of. Yes?
Yeah.
Good. So
She's asking for her.
she says there she in her home she has pictures and she has prayers and sayings and verses that when she loses track of the intention, it helps bring her back. And she's really nicely expressed. I'm not there. She doesn't say I'm not there yet. She doesn't use that phrase. But I have the tools. And you put tools around you that can help you bring you back. Something worked for you. For her, it's Vrindavan consciousness, and for you, it's whatever it is. And then you have an incubation chamber around you of things that when you do forget, and the little bulb goes on saying, "Oh, I forgot again," you have resources or tools that you can access. You just reach out to. It's a little bit like the expression I shared over here. From time to time, not just even when you're distracted, but by regular practice. You open Bhagavad Gita, and you read a verse from Bhagavad Gita, meditate on the verse of Bhagavad Gita, put it away. That's a nice practice. Not just when you're distracted or, you want to, just by practice. There was a nice example of this when a Grahastha devotee who was with us on Sankirtan in New York, his name was Lalit Kumar, he had before everybody had a shoulder bag, he had a shoulder bag. And there's one thing in his shoulder bag, and it's a Bhagavad Gita. And right in the middle of street Sankirtan, he'd open up his shoulder bag, pull out his Bhagavad Gita, just stand there and read a verse of Bhagavad Gita, meditate on it, hold it to his heart, put it back in his book bag, and carry on. He did it very regularly. And you have something that works for you that you do regularly, and it helps refocus you. Because the tendency is to drift. Because we're busy, and there's stressful stuff, and it's pressing, and it's urgent, and important, and we lose track of the intention, the higher purpose. So do things on a regular basis, and have something that when you do recognize, this is what Jagatrini was saying, there's tools and resources I can immediately reach out to. When that little light goes on, I can make that connection again. And practice, and it becomes quite natural for you. Practice becomes your life. Practice becomes second nature. The cultivation of bhakti, sadhana bhakti. Practice, abhyasa. It's easier said than done, but that's the path. It works. How about any one of the three of you? Anyone? Anything you'd like to ask? Okay. Okay. Online?
First question is from Sanchari. Guru Maharaj, where does rationalizing a response to a situation or an event come into this topic of deception within spiritual life? What are the parameters that can help us decide when rationalization is crossing into, I guess, knowingly or unknowingly, engaging in deception or deceptive practices that will harm spiritual life?
Is the word vacillation or realization?
Rationalizing.
Rationalization, okay. So when do we know we crossed the line? That's your question. We heard it from Bhaktisiddhanta. Where there is sincerity, Krishna will give the intelligence. So we're dependent upon Krishna providing us intelligence to know when we cross the line. You can, as you're doing right now, asking the question that you're asking, you can do a little reality check with persons who can give you feedback on a particular, have I crossed the line here? So if you have honest relationships with persons who you trust and they are trustworthy, and you can disclose your, confidential stuff that's going on, and be ready, open, and inviting feedback in case you cross the line. It's sadhu sangha in a real nice, protective incubation chamber, I call it. A place where it can help you grow healthy and properly. Good association is really important. And good sadhana so that there's good intelligence so you can discriminate within. And I guess a third is knowledge of scripture, and that will help you have a lens to look through. What's rationalization and what's genuine.
Next question is from Varshani. Vasudev, known as Anakadundabi, is famous for his honesty. He had promised to Kamsa he would give his children, and it seems he placed that value subservient to Krishna's desire or plans. Our lives are run by some values too, and it may run against Krishna's desire. For instance, values we hold plays out in career moves, parenting styles, how we respond to people, etc. How do we know when and how our values can be made subservient to his?
This question is not the same. It's quite similar to Sanchari's question. Now, how do you get a reality compass and make sure you're headed in the right direction? It's a different way of asking quite similar question. My answer would be quite similar. Become familiar with Guru Sadhu Shastra, have good association, and keep yourself in the mood of wanting to please Guru and Krishna, and slowly you'll get a clearer sense of, how are you headed in the right direction, whatever the right way of saying what your question is. Very similar to the prior question.
And she has a second question. Children born here in the US have two lives to live. Mainstream, career, American culture to deal with, and at home and temple, they're exposed to devotional values and culture. How can we as parents guide them such that they're comfortable with both spheres?
and not duplicity that can be easy to take shelter, and not duplicitous that can
This is the parenting question. No easy answer to the parenting question. And even if you give the answer, be Krishna conscious, you can be Krishna conscious and it doesn't guarantee your children are going to be Krishna conscious, because they're going to make choices based upon their Krishna consciousness and so forth. You can make your best effort, but I like his answer about his response with regard to iPhones and having access to technology. It's having boundaries, but the boundaries are self-imposed and other-imposed. Because other-imposed boundaries aren't going to work, because when parents aren't around and the child really wants to do something else, they're going to do something else when their parents aren't around watching. So there has to be some internal conviction, and therefore parenting has a big task of understanding, why do we do what we do? Why do we not do the things we don't do? The why question. When the why question is understood, and when there's the right kind of relationship between the parent and the child, then they just want to please the parent, or if not the parent, then someone who they look up to and have regard for. Therefore, having someone you can confide in and hold yourself accountable to somewhere, a friend or some older person, like a mentor type person, that helps a lot. Again, the parenting question is, there's no end to it.
In response to your question earlier, Radha says, I'm here.
Oh, Radha.
And Atulya has a question.
Okay.
This is about childhood experiences.
Childhood experiences.
How a child can evaluate if they're pleasing Krishna or not. They live a lot in the present moment, and something that is in far future seems unrealistic. A lot of their time is spent in academics, playing, and other extracurricular activities. How can a child endeavor and experience presence of Krishna and please Krishna in their daily lives?
Parenting question. And there's no end. When once again, the element or the consideration of sincerity is so important, because the question is, how will a child know if? And without sincerity, there isn't a possibility. So, how do, then, from the parent's side, because this is a parent asking the question, how do you help instill or encourage or pass on sincerity to your child so they can get that intelligence, so when you're not around, they don't go off the deep end or do something embarrassing or hurtful or something. A lot of that has to do with your own character as a parent, and the receptivity of the child and the relationship between the two. It's going to be different for different parents and different children and different circumstances. The principle is charity begins at home. There needs to be a loving relationship where the child understands where the parents are coming from is a place of love, and therefore they want to please their parent. There she goes, upstairs with her mouth full of banana. Something that comes to mind is this. It's not exactly on topic, but I was attending a home program somewhere, and I was using a projector like this one in the middle of the room here, and the projector, that multi-plug cable was right next to the projector, and next to me was a little boy, and on the other side of the little boy was his mother. And the little boy, as little boys are sometimes curious, he was curious about that multi-plug, and he reached his hand out to touch it. And I watched as he was, like, uh-oh. But his mother just went like this, and went like that. And he pulled his hand back. And I thought, wow. She didn't have to say anything. And just a little gesture, I was thinking, what a wonderful relationship between parent and child. She just goes like that, and because I know some other children, as soon as you say no, it's yes. Their favorite word is no. So it depends, it's so much relationship oriented. Affectionate mother and a child that understands there's affection coming from mother or from either parent, and the willingness to just to please. And then there's protection. Where there's love, there's protection. And outside of love, it's not as much protection. You can do something, but it's not as effective. So most important is a loving relationship and parent-child dynamic, and that takes a lot to invest in a loving relationship. And of course, loving parents want to love their children, but exactly what that looks like is not always understood by the parent or the child. So it's the parenting question. For your information, those of you that are parents and want to learn something more about parenting rather than from a sannyasi, Nityananda Pran has made that his with some evaluation, with some coaching, with some professional training, is kind of going down that path of helping parents with parenting questions. Nityananda Pran in Chicago. So if you're interested, you can find out how to contact them and see what he's up to, and it can help. Because I just got a letter from someone that said, wow, I'm getting a lot of help because, I think you know who I mean. One of somebody that Prima Trungani knows, because they're getting a lot of help. Anything else online? Two more.
One is from Radha.
Hey.
If prasadam is good and Krishna likes sweets, then why are prasadam sweets unhealthy for us? Why aren't they good for us?
Well, they are good for you. I'm going to be giving out some Mahaprasadam right after. But moderation, please.
And Tharani Radha, how can I check if my intention is pure to please Krishna?
Watch over time, and you'll see. Because when intention is pure, there may be some wavering, but intention will bring you back, and it's verifiable over time. Yeah. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Swami Maharaj ki.